Okay, welcome to week 3. And this week we're going to be doing a lot of stuff related to our enemies, as well as creating some gold drops and doing an enemy inventory. But before we can get into all that, we need to bake our Navmesh, which is what's going to allow our enemies to move around in the world. So what we want to do is click on our terrain. You can either click on one of your islands here, or you can click the terrain in the hierarchy. You're going to want to make sure that static is checked. If it's not checked, just click on the box and that'll check it off. And we want to do the same thing for water. We want to click on that object and we want to click static for that. And that's because static objects are what is able to, or are able to be baked into the Navmesh when we end up baking it. Next, what you'll have to do is click the window panel, and you're going to go down to where it says AI. You're going to click navigation. That's going to open this navigation pane over here by your inspector. And what we want to do is, again, make sure in our water object we have navigation static checked off. But for water, again, making sure we have the water object selected, we want to switch that to not walkable. And this is because we don't want our enemies to be able to walk down into the water. We want them only to be able to walk on top of our islands. So then we'll also select our terrain and make sure that navigation static is selected, and then we want that to be set to walkable. We're then going to go over to our navigation pane here, the bake pane, excuse me, and we're going to set this max slope up to 60 and this step height to 0.6. It may already be set there, but if it's not, just make sure all these settings match. And this is just going to make sure that even if we have some steep inclines on our hills here, our enemies are able to walk up and down and around the island. Once you've got those two things ready to go, you can click the bake button. And you'll see down here, this thing is loading. So it's going to take a minute before that finishes. It all depends on your computer. So while it loads, you can navigate in your assets panel here over to the Techability folder, and we're going to open NPCs. And you're going to see two NPC prefabs here. You can click on your inspector pane at the top to open up our inspector on these guys. And we want to actually add a Navmesh component, or a Navmesh agent component to both. So you're going to click Add Component and select Navmesh Agent. You're going to do that for both guys here. And then we also want to tag both of these guys. So to do that, we'll click on both of them and we'll click Tag. And we're going to add a tag, and we should have to add this NPC tag. If you already have it, that's great. You can just throw it on. But if you don't, you'll just hit Add Tag, hit the plus sign, type in NPC, and save it. So we'll give both of these guys the NPC tag. There we go. And it looks like our Navmesh just stopped. That loading bar went away. So if we go back over to our Navmesh pane, you'll now see that we have all of these nice circles and blue panes around our islands. And there's this clean separation between where the water touches the island and the island itself. So that means that we know our enemies are not going to be wandering out into the ocean to chase after our player. Now, the last thing we want to do before we finish this step is we just want to place an enemy or two out into the world. And this is just because our check setup is going to use these enemies to determine whether or not we have our Navmesh. So just drop a couple on any island. Anywhere is fine. Just make sure that they are as close as you can to the island. And the easiest way to do that is to just drag them out into the scene view and drop them directly onto an island.